Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Why do people vilify wealthy business owners and landlords, but praise wealthy actors and athletes? Rent control plans must be killed. Where the real opportunity is in today's real estate market. Then my in-person sit-down interview with the president of the Micronation of Liberland today on Get Rich Education.
Since 2014, the powerful Get Rich Education podcast has created more passive income for people than nearly any other show in the world. This show teaches you how to earn strong returns from passive real estate investing in the best markets without losing your time being a flipper or landlord. Show host Keith Weinhold writes for both Forbes and Rich Dad Advisors and delivers a new show every week. Since 2014, there's been millions of listener downloads in 188 world nations. He has A-list show guests include top-selling personal finance author Robert Kiyosaki. Get Rich Education can be heard on every podcast platform, plus it has its own dedicated Apple and Android listener phone apps. Build wealth on the go with the Get Rich Education podcast. Sign up now for the Get Rich Education podcast or visit GetRichEducation.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. From Dubrovnik, Croatia to Dublin, Ohio, and across 188 nations worldwide, I'm Keith Weinhold, and you are inside episode 512 of Get Rich Education. You can set up your life so that you stop using your time to make money. Use the bank's money to make money. People come from scarcity families, just like I did, with a scarcity mindset that think all debt is bad. Paying off debt won't make you wealthy. You don't build wealth, so by the time you reach age 62, you think, hey, I just paid off my last debt, and now I can retire. It doesn't work that way. Well, why couldn't you retire sooner? Sheesh. So what do people mistakenly do? They end up working their whole life for people that have debt. Successful business owners and real estate investors carry debt. That's how they can own so much productivity and so many assets. And you know what's interesting here? Business owners and real estate moguls, they're the ones that often seem to be vilified, criticized, ridiculed for obtaining wealth when they took risk, took out loans, and provided jobs or housing for others. Yet at the same time, somehow actors, athletes, and singers are all praised for obtaining wealth as a performing artist. That makes zero sense. Why would you criticize a successful business owner like Amazon founder Jeff Bezos? Bezos probably made your life distinctly better by offering you convenient shopping for anything, protein bars with a few clicks, free shipping, and pioneering drone delivery. A landlord is often vilified. Most landlords are mom and pop types that aren't even that wealthy. But even if they were, as long as they're not a slumlord, they took on risk, debt, operating expenses, and being on call 24/7 in order to provide others with housing. So with Bezos types and landlords, we're talking about taking risk to provide society with essentials like food and housing. And while the business owners get vilified baselessly, performing artists like actors, athletes, and singers do not, yet they merely provide entertainment to society. Now, I like entertainment, and I follow sports too, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, but their services are not essential. Take a movie actor. They get paid well for pretending to be somebody else. Consider how absurd that sounds, and yet they're praised for obtaining wealth from doing that. So this is really backwards. And, I think that a lot of this resentment for business owners is that you can't really see what they do for you like you can a performer that's on the front stage like Beyonce or Lizzo or Taylor Swift. Business owners, real estate investors, they're on the backstage, and what an entertainer does front stage, that is highly visible. I mean, that's my best guess about why this is. And a lot of the time, it just comes back to these primordial human emotions like resentment and jealousy and envy. There's no reason to criticize the rich just solely for being wealthy, because deep down, it's all where we want to be anyway. How is Bezos bad and Lizzo good? I don't get it, but it's been that way for a while. Now, when you look at surveys of institutions that are most trusted over time, and it's been pretty much the same these past few decades, what's at the top of the polls are small businesses. People say that they're trusting of small businesses, and your rental property business surely counts here. Small business is trusted more than institutions like the media or politicians. So I encourage you on social media and wherever else to support small businesses. And it's kind of funny how friends, they often might not put a like on your small business, though they say that they trust them and that they resent large businesses. Then that friend turns right around and supports Apple, Coca-Cola, and Starbucks. People say they trust small business, but so often then they go patronize large businesses. Nothing wrong with patronizing large businesses, but you're just not doing what you're saying. So my point is, don't resent anyone just for financial success, and consider outwardly supporting small businesses if you indeed put a lot of trust in them yourself, just like much of America says that they do. Now, is there a movement afoot to disenfranchise big, wealthy business owners or big landlords? I mean, we're talking about these very people that are resented. Well, one way is with rent control. That is, capping the amount of rent that landlords can charge. Now, since COVID hit in March of 2020, apartment rents are up 18% and single-family rents are up 25%. Okay, those are cumulative figures over this 4+ year stretch. And that's actually not that much. It's about 5% a year. And now, sure, political news has been like galactically big this month with the Trump shooting and the Biden dropout and the Kamala Harris endorsement as a Democratic frontrunner. And we rarely talk politics here for a few reasons. Number one, it's divisive. People lose their minds. Secondly, speculation is cheap. So much of politics is speculating on what might happen in the future. Well, there's one known here. Whether you like it or not, expect 6 more months of President Biden. And thirdly, politics is overblown. Its importance is inflated. A president rarely changes your life. But the good news in this is that you can, your autonomy, your freedom, your decisions, you can change your life. So to put the politics aside, let's stick to a one-issue subject. The White House published what I call a rent control light plan earlier this month. And to give some credit first, this same plan, it also repurposes public land to build more affordable housing. I sent you a link to the whole thing in our newsletter last week. Well, this rent control light thing has almost zero chance of becoming law. VP Kamala Harris endorsed it on X. President Trump would kill it. Even if it's revived under the next president, it has no realistic shot of passing a divided Congress. But let's look at this anyway. What was proposed is that if a property owner increases rent more than 5% annually, it would reduce tax incentives for large landlords. I'll tell you what large landlords are in a moment. Now, you could still increase rent by more than 5%. It would just reduce the federal tax breaks, and it would have lasted for only 2 years. And the reason the White House put this proposal together for just 2 years is as a bridge to a time when more homes are expected to be built. I mean, that's the real intent here. And importantly, this all would have only applied to owners of 50+ units. So that's mostly for apartment owners. Single-family rental owners would be largely untouched. But consider how apartment owners could have lost their accelerated depreciation benefit, also known as their cost segregation. And note that I'm already talking about this rent control light proposal in the past tense, not the present tense, because this whole thing, it's just a bunch of virtue signaling to try to show that something is being done to rein in housing inflation. Well, this is really odd and awkward since the inflation came from the government in the first place. I mean, sheesh, this is like shooting someone in the foot and then trying to get praise for bandaging the victim that you just shot. Well, the federal government, they just don't do rent control on this level at all. They haven't. In fact, the feds haven't regulated rents on private buildings since World War II. So this really isn't a thing, but it just brings to light that rent control is a bad idea. It puts a cap on rents time after time after time. History shows us that it makes developers stop building. Now, the White House plan did have a carve-out for new builds. Also, what this does is that landlords have no incentive to improve property. That's why it reduces housing supply, which is already low, and it creates long-term dilapidated living conditions like I touched on here just a couple episodes ago. But how weird to even make such an ill-advised proposal. I mean, look, if government puts a price cap of $2 on a gallon of milk, then dairies will stop producing milk. Milk shelves are going to be empty. It's like in communist countries. This is why you saw photos of bread lines. When there are price controls, then manufacturers don't produce. And just the same, landlords would stop providing housing. If I didn't put a fine enough point on this yet, President Obama's top economist, Jason Furman, he probably said it best in the Washington Post. Furman says, quote, "Rent control has been about as disgraced as any economic policy in the toolkit. The idea that we'd be reviving and expanding it will ultimately make our housing supply problems worse, not better." End quote from President Obama's top economist. 94% of economists agreed that rent control reduces quality and quantity of housing available. It is the most effective way to destroy a city aside from bombing it. What an ill-conceived plan to regulate rents. That's rent control, but the most dangerous drinking game of 2024, that is still sipping at every mention of the interest rate lock-in effect on a real estate or economics podcast. Though it's been 2+ years since they made their dramatic rise, many are still transfixed on mortgage rates. They recently hit a 5-month low below 7%, and a lot of people still expect mortgage rates to fall between today and next year, since inflation has now plunged from a high of 9.1% 2 years ago down to 3% now. The Federal Reserve has held rates steady for more than a year now, and most don't expect any change either when they meet in 2 days. But be ready, be prepared. When mortgage rates fall substantially, millions more buyers will qualify to buy a home, and this could substantially stoke housing demand and lift housing prices further. Now, last week on the show, you heard GRE investment coach Naresh and I discuss Liberland, Liberland, Liberland. Earlier this month, I visited the exhibit hall at an event called Freedom Fest. I saw the Liberland booth, and I recognized their name, and I congratulated the people there in the booth on that. The fact that I have heard of Liberland before, that's somewhat of a compliment to them. It shows me that they're doing something right. Liberland is a small piece of land between Serbia and Croatia in Eastern Europe, and it apparently hasn't been claimed by any other nation for decades. The name Liberland, I think it's easy to remember because it sounds like liberty, so that's how you pronounce it. Well, I got to talking to some of their representatives at the exhibit hall. They're all smart people, but there was no one person that had all the answers I was looking for. So I requested to speak with the president of Liberland, and about 2 hours later, we made that happen. So today, shortly, you'll hear Liberland President Vit Jedlicka and I together. Now, the United Nations doesn't yet recognize Liberland. I'll ask the president if other nations recognize it. Wikipedia calls Liberland a micronation. It is 7 square kilometers. That's almost 3 square miles. It's mostly forested. I don't believe there are any mountains there that I can see in the photos. It has Danube river frontage and just a few people there. The Danube river frontage is key because it contains an island that belongs to Liberland, and also the Danube is key because it also connects to the Black Sea. And we'll see if it can be a tax-free haven, which is apparently the intent. You might be able to see this working when you compare it to micronations like Monaco and Liechtenstein. Some journalists have been skeptical about Liberland. You'll see how I approach it with their president shortly. He champions laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire means a minimal government. They're also making the new nation's laws transparent on the blockchain and an economy based on cryptocurrency. As for Liberland's population, by March of this year, Liberland had 1,200 registered citizens who had paid up to $10,000 for Liberlandian passports, but few are actually living in the nation now, working on it and building it. Neighboring Croatia has at times been hostile and blocked off access to Liberland these past few years. You will hear some background noise in President Vit Jedlicka and I's upcoming interview, so I ask for your attention and patience there. After all, we are in an exhibit hall at a conference. I'll just call him Wit in the interview. And what does his day-to-day look like? He travels globally a lot, often trying to get into international diplomatic and friendship agreements. But how do you just adopt statehood out of nothing? That's what's interesting here. Now, when he describes Liberland to me, you can't see it here in the audio only, but he often points to Liberty Island, an island on the Danube River that's part of Liberland. Does having a free nation mean that you have the freedom to do whatever you want on your land? Or are there soon going to be HOAs there? I'll ask him that very question. Liberland's president and I coming up here shortly. First, as for more, I suppose, familiar land here in the U.S., you can't make any money from the rental property that you don't own. We are here to help get you started being profitable that way, and it's free. Get some of those real estate pays 5 ways properties, and we have access to a good number of them here at GRE, a good variety, different property types, different geographies. But at times I'm asked, where is the real estate opportunity today in this real estate market with higher prices, higher rents, normalized interest rates, higher operating expenses, and low housing supply? Really, the opportunity is in affordable housing. If I could just put 2 words to it, that's the short answer. Affordable housing. Like I often say, provide housing that's clean, safe, affordable, and functional. And today's market really emphasizes the affordable. That's where the sustainable demand is, since so many wannabe first-time homebuyers are priced out of the market currently. It's like a dam that's waiting to break once interest rates go lower. Compared to a year ago, America has a lower proportion of homeowners and more renters, and the renter numbers just look to keep increasing due to that low affordability and also this surge of immigrants from the past year or so. That is why you want to own affordable rental housing. Now, affordable housing, really, that can mean a few things in a physical form. That could mean mobile home parks, single-family homes, duplexes to fourplexes, or larger apartment buildings. But in any case, an income-producing asset, do you know what that does for you? That's like an employee that's working for you 24/7 and without the personality problems, and they never call in sick. And when you're looking for a property, it's easier to screen properties than it is hire and screen employees. We can help set up an entire real estate investment plan for you. with properties like a couple properties I'll detail for you here shortly. And I also sent you these property details in the second section of last week's newsletter. You also got to see a photo of one of them. And by the way, you can get our wealth building newsletter by texting GRE to 66866. Just do it right now while it's on your mind for our free Don't Quit Your Daydream letter. Text GRE to 66866. And what's been in our newsletter lately? I showed you exactly where I think home prices are going to go by the year 2028. I loved writing about that and researching that for you in the Don't Quit Your Daydream letter. Also, in recent letters, you got need-to-know details about are banks in real trouble now? The wolf of Airbnb sentenced to prison. Why new homes will keep getting smaller. Why you can't blame investors for pricier housing. Why prioritizing property is a huge mistake. And the 10 cities where you will regret buying property. And if those stories don't interest you, if getting the first crack at profitable income property does not interest you, then you won't want to subscribe. But if it sounds like those details interest you, again, you can get the Don't Quit Your Daydream letter by texting GRE to 66866. Available properties we've had at GRE Marketplace lately that our investment coach can help you with are these two brand new single-family homes that make great rentals. The first one is in Prairie Grove, Arkansas. These are the places where the numbers work. And Arkansas has been named the most landlord-friendly of all 50 states. It is 4-bed, 2-bath, purchase price of $288K, and a rent of $2,200. Good numbers for a new build there. It's 1,550 square feet. The second property, also a new build, is in Pinson, Alabama. That's just northeast of Birmingham. And this single-family rental is 3-bed, 2-bath. The purchase price is $303K. The rent is $2,000. It's 1,408 square feet. And that rent-to-price ratio, well, that's not as good as the first one in Arkansas. But of course, Alabama's got those ultra-low property tax rates that you get to pay, yet you can own it and reside in any state or nation. We can help set up an entire real estate investment plan for you, whether it's with properties like these or others, with our investment coaching, and it is free for you. Yes, it is just as free as sun, fresh air, and hugs. If you think you're ready to buy some Real Estate Pays 5 Ways property, book a time to chat at gremarketplace.com/coach to help connect you with a marketplace of income properties. That's gremarketplace.com/coach. Liberland President Vit Jedlicka and I straight ahead. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Hey, you can get your mortgage loans at the same place where I get mine at Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They provided our listeners with more loans than any provider in the entire nation because they specialize in income properties. They help you build a long-term plan for growing your real estate empire with leverage. You can start your pre-qualification and chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. Start now while it's on your mind at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's ridgelendinggroup.com. Your bank is getting rich off of you. The national average bank account pays less than 1% on your savings. If your money isn't making 4%, you're losing your hard-earned cash to inflation. Let the liquidity fund help you put your money to work with minimum risk. Your cash generates up to an 8% return with compound interest year in and year out instead of earning less than 1% sitting in your bank account. The minimum investment is just $25K. You keep getting paid until you decide you want your money back. Their decade-plus track record proves they've always paid their investors 100% in full and on time. And I would know because I'm an investor too. Earn 8%, hundreds of others are. Text FAMILY to 66866. Learn more about Freedom Family Investments Liquidity Fund on your journey to financial freedom through passive income. Text FAMILY to 66866.
Hey everybody, it's Robert Helms of the Real Estate Guys radio program. So glad you found Keith Weinhold and Get Rich Education. Don't quit your daydream.
Hey, welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with someone that's going to explain a different subject to us. We're talking about starting up and potential new nation. I'm with the president of that nation called Liberland. I'm with their president, Vit. Welcome in.
Good to meet you, Keith.
It's so good to have you here. And, interestingly, we met at an event called Freedom Fest. So this is potentially so parallel with that as you're looking to develop your own nation. Now, at a place like Freedom Fest, I think we have a lot of people that have a certain set of opinions. And a lot of people at a place like Freedom Fest, where you champion ideals, will probably love to tell you how they would like changes to be made in the United States. But I think if you ask that same person, okay, what if you begin with a clean slate? How would you begin a nation anew? But you're actually trying to do that. So tell us about Liberland.
It's pretty exciting to hear Kennedy, the candidate for president, talking about his plans to utilize blockchain to make the country transparent and more functioning. Liberland is, I would say, at least 5 to 10 years ahead of any other nation states in utilizing that. We're combining the best technology that is out there with the best ideology that is out there, which is, of course, libertarianism, making sure that the society is free as possible within some framework of basic rules. So this is exactly what we're doing. And we were looking for a piece of land to manifest that in physical world. And here we go. It's Liberland. It's a beautiful piece of land between Croatia and Serbia that was not claimed by any other country for more than 25 years. We came there, we stuck the flag. We actually took 9 years to even get inside of it properly. And now we're building and living there for more than a year.
So this 7 square kilometer plot of land between Croatia and Serbia that is on the Danube floodplain. You got frontage on the Danube River, even an island on the Danube River here in this startup nation, if you will, of Liberland. Really, as I've come to understand it, one real goal of Liberland is just to have any nation in the world recognize it as its own sovereign nation.
Well, we actually got a couple countries to write or sign a regular deals, like with another state. We started with Somaliland, which was at the time unrecognized country. It's fully functional. Interesting story. It's actually former piece of Somalia, which got independence like 25 years ago, and they're fairly prosperous and functioning country, even without any recognition by any other country in the world. Now they got recently recognized by Ethiopia. We followed up with Haiti agreement. We're signing a couple more agreements right now. I'm actually heading to one of the African countries to sign some friendship agreements. So it's not that the other countries don't recognize us. No, we're working hard on diplomacy. We have diplomatic relations with places like El Salvador, where we were on official diplomatic visits. So, of course, traditional form of recognition is one of our priorities, but it's not the number one priority. Really, our number one priority is to finish, we're very close, the whole model of statehood and utilize the 745,000 people that applied for citizenship for real building of the country itself and the nation.
Some recognition is coming slowly, but pulling back a bigger picture, why do this? Why take this on? Why start your own nation?
Well, why not? I think leading by good example is the best way to do things, like talking about liberty. I did a lot of educational work on explaining people why liberty works, but it's much better to do things in the practical terms.
Now, what's interesting is, we talked about freedom and the ideals of freedom earlier. Does freedom mean freedom to do whatever you want?
Really, within some boundaries, of course, as long as you don't breach other people's freedoms, and you have to find the right setup. But right now, the problem with the current society is that there are so many regulations, you don't even know what the hell are you breaching, and you're usually not breaching anybody's property or anybody's. It's just a bunch of stupid regulations that make your life tough. You cannot do business. You cannot even help your community. It's funny what kind of stuff we're dealing with in Croatia right now. There is a mosquito calamity in the neighborhood around Liberland, and the local municipality don't have money to fix it. And they also don't let us to fix it because you have to have a special license for fixing it. So everybody is suffering under the mosquito calamity, which is kind of funny.
Okay, so that's an example of overregulation, potentially too many laws. You just brought up one of the limits of freedom, potentially. Well, we don't want people to be able to do anything, or therefore they might be able to hurt or to harm another person. But therefore, that would be some sort of law, and then there would be some need to sort of enforce that. So how does a startup country that wants to be a free nation, how do you meet needs like laws and enforcement and perhaps a judicial process?
Well, we have a standard framework for the country. There is now a newly elected Congress. It's still a test election, but it has been already elected according to all the principles that the blockchain is bringing: full transparency, immutability. It happens within the split of second at the very minimal cost. So all these things are actually already happening. And the Congress will now take all the laws that were prepared by the preparatory committee. I believe we have the whole framework of the laws necessary to run a state. It's around 250 pages of regulations. Very simple framework, which already allows a society to function quite well. And I would like to keep it that way, keep the constitution at let's say the 20 pages and another 230 pages of different laws that define the ways that the society should work. And anybody basically allowed to read all the regulations in the country within one day. It's not like here, right, in the US.
Yes, but as population grows, as the infrastructure grows, as more complicated needs must be met, the size of government invariably and inevitably seems to expand with all existing nations in the world. I think the UN recognizes 193 sovereign nations currently. How do you keep the size of government from expanding over the long term in Liberland?
It's a challenge, of course, but the way we keep it is the way that there is only one institution that can make new laws, and it's kind of a corporate governance of Liberland. But that corporate governance is in check by three other institutions that can get rid of the laws. The first and most important one is public veto. So majority of citizens can veto any law or regulations that they don't like. Second one is the Constitutional Court. So Constitutional Court looks into the law if it basically is only focused on security, justice, or diplomacy, so that the state shouldn't legislate on other things, really let other things to the private sector. So the Constitutional Court strictly looks if it adheres to that. That's another important institution. Then there is something like House of Lords of Liberland that can also veto the laws that the corporate governance, the Congress, actually creates. So one institution to make laws and three institutions to get rid of it.
Tell us about what's there now, the natural resources, the population, and the infrastructure.
Well, that's a beautiful territory with the island next to Liberland. This is part of Liberland. It's called Liberty Island. It's a long, beautiful sandy beach. Right now, under construction, there is 24 tree houses in this area. So it will be, one of the first things will be the tourism, and we need to be able to host the visitors. We are planning 2 major music festivals and conferences in the summer, which will take place in August and in September. Of course, you're very well invited. We want to promote the tourism in Liberland, but also in the whole region. The biggest research, and it's like that with any country that is prosperous around the world, be it Hong Kong or Singapore, it's not the natural resources, it's the capacity of people to freely make trade and do business.
You're right. In fact, a place like, Hong Kong or Singapore or even Japan itself have been exemplary of that. A place can be prosperous without having many natural resources. It's really about the ingenuity of the people. When we talk about the people, tell us more about the population.
Well, the population right now, we've got 800,000 people almost that sign up for citizenship, which is a huge pipeline. I think the reasonable, ideal population of Liberland will be around 140,000. So we cannot even accept everybody to physically live in Liberland because we would be too overpopulated. Right now, we've got some thousand citizens and 6,500 e-residents that basically went through the pipeline. And there is a couple dozens of people living on the territory of Liberland and working and building stuff. So it's kind of fun to see that initial development. We are very early into the development. There is still quite a bit of obstacles to really speed up the development of Liberland, mainly installed by Croatia, but we're very happy that after all these years, we're able to actually be there physically and develop stuff. So we're building a small hospital. There are 7 construction workers that take care of it. We're also building the treehouse resort. There is another 10 guys working on that. And then there is a bunch of people that came to settle, and they're helping with some stuff on the site. And then there is around 150 people that live around Liberland that are connected and are supporting the movement well.
Now, we're a real estate platform. We're going to have both public land and private land.
Every land is private in a sense in Liberland. The deal is that right now people can actually come to Liberland and claim piece of land if they have enough merits. Merits are the shares of Liberland, and they can actually not even exchange them. If they just have them, they have the right to settle piece of land, which is kind of exciting. Even though there are all these obstacles, but we're helping people to get over them and get the development of the country going as fast as possible.
Can a person purchase merits or purchase land in Liberland?
Right now, anybody that donates to Liberland on the website gets the merits.
Are there going to be things like HOAs in Liberland? Is that something that you foresee?
What is HOA?
Homeowners associations, where you have neighborhoods and boards in those neighborhoods where they need to approve of things like, hey, you can only paint your home 4 different colors and you need to mow your grass within every 2 weeks.
Well, naturally, there will be different types of associations in Liberland. We're not going to force one or the other type. This property development here on Liberty Island, the 3 houses in this area, will be kind of association of sort. We want to have 24 people that invest into the 3 house, and they will act as a community. They will help each other, but they will also be the place to visitors to really make sure that we have a good initial settlement for the permanent population. And I would like every single one of these guys to have some nice story behind how they came to Liberland and why they're building a house there. We want to make a reality TV show out of it as soon as possible as well.
What about currency? The euro is used in the area, but you mentioned blockchain earlier, and I don't think you plan on using the euro in Liberland. Tell us about that.
We don't do that. We use Liberland dollar, and we use Liberland merit. Those are the main currencies that are tied with our blockchain. And Liberland dollar was launched on exchanges 3 months ago, trading quite nicely, steadily at $2 per one Liberland dollar. So this is also demanded currency by our settlers.
Is it a cryptocurrency?
Yes, it's the main currency of our blockchain. Our blockchain is standalone. It's not depending on any other blockchain. Our citizens are the ones that secure the network and run the network. They run the servers. Every citizen in Liberland has the right to run the network. It's kind of fun. We're not really being dependent on any other network like Ethereum or Polkadot. We are simply running our own thing with its own main token. The main token is Liberland dollar. But the main political token is Liberland merit, and that also comes with the political voting rights.
Do you foresee there being a future rental property market on Liberland?
Well, of course, all these 3 houses are meant to be for rental, for bigger events, for team building. So this is something that is happening right now, and I wish we could have at least 50 bedrooms there by the end of summer.
Well, now that we've talked about how society might work on Liberland, why don't we pull back a bit more and talk about that physical geography? Because you chose an area that's basically on the Danube floodplain, so it's probably pretty fertile, and it's near some other populated nations. But of course, there are some areas of the world that no one else is claiming. Tell us about how you chose this area over all the others in the world.
This area was in the most reasonable place, I would say, between the 2 countries that had war, and they learned to sort out things in a peaceful way. And, Antarctica is also unclaimed, but you don't want to stay there. It's for freezing, right? This particular place is heart-shaped. It's 7 square kilometers. It was in culturally similar environment to where I was born, so I was considering it as a perfect place to start a new country.
You can get all 4 seasons in Liberland. What else should one know about Liberland that they come approach you with questions about? What do people really want to hear about?
They, of course, are interested in the passport. They want to see what kind of utility does it have. There are a bunch of countries where you can use it to get in and out, which is kind of cool. But the main utility for Americans, for example, is that they use it on crypto exchanges or they use it with different financial institutions as a second passport. If the U.S. passport is not good for that, it's a great membership club, in the country that is just being born, and it's a great social gathering. Think about this: 25,000 Americans that sign up for citizenship as well. We've got a small consulate in every bigger state, or at least a representative person. The Pranav, for example, here is representing Liberland in Washington, D.C. So we've got a nice network of nice guys all around the place, and then a potential big supportive network with all of these people that sign up for citizenship.
Now, how do you get the word out about Liberland so that people can get interested? Of course, we are an example of this right now as our audience is learning about Liberland and the pros and the cons of this concept of a potential new nation. How do others learn about it?
There were articles written in Liberland, I believe, in more than 40,000 different medias, actually. So we were pretty heavily covered in past. I believe more than 1 or 2 billion people learned about it through the media outreach. But the word is also spreading from person to person. Like, people like it, they get on board, their friends, their families. It's kind of exciting to see that.
What about the language and the culture that you see developing here? Will it feel European just based on its geographic proximity? Is that what you foresee, or does it have more to do with where the inhabitants come from?
English, of course, is number one language, but we are also developing Liberlandish out of all the mistakes that we make in English. That makes the language a little bit difficult to learn and understand.
Americans haven't learned English.
We've got a quite nice culture there, which is, of course, mixture of the local Slavic culture with this international mix. And now there is a lot of people from Scandinavia that are moving in. I think we've got a bigger German group now coming. There is quite a few Americans that are being involved. It's quite difficult, for example, for Americans to stay in Liberland right now. We have to little bit improve our relationship with Croatia because Americans are being banned from Liberland, actually, for some strange reason.
Okay, still some antagonism with your neighbor Croatia.
Yeah. That's kind of a funny situation.
And Croatia has created some access problems as well. Tell us about that.
Well, that has been solved last year. We came into Liberland with more than 50 people at the same time. So they had no means of preventing that access. And since that time, actually have free entry in and out of Liberland. We have a small border crossing there with the Croatian policeman and kind of agreement that we can pass in and out, which is nice.
Try to keep things smooth with Croatia there on the one side of Liberland here, this new startup nation. And we're talking with President Vit here of Liberland. Vit, are there any last things that people need to know about Liberland before I ask how they can go to your website and learn more? Are there any just other last things that somebody should know?
It's a great opportunity to visit now with these two festivals. Those are nice social gatherings. It's the Floating Man Festival in August. That's the main
Floating Man, like Burning Man.
Yeah, but it's Floating Man because we are on Danube. And then there is the Liverpool, which is a major international festival that has moved to Liberland this year, which is based on Anarchapulco, a famous Mexican festival. That will be probably the biggest cultural event this year.
Will Liberland be a success if it is a net exporter rather than a net importer? Because it's difficult to have sectors for everything from industry to agriculture in Liberland.
Our biggest export is freedom ideas. Like it's actually spreading like wildfire. Think about it. Like for 2 months, we had the biggest immigration in the world, bigger than United States, right? There was more people applying for citizenship of Liberland than there were applicants for green cards in the United States. The idea itself, it's something that the time has come. There is amazing interest in building new countries, building free countries. And right now, I can see that we are on the right track when people like Kennedy are pushing more transparency through blockchain, because what they are talking about, we have already done it and we are applying it in the real world.
Well, it's an interesting experiment. In this way, you, the listener, the viewer, you can follow it as an experiment, as an example of what to not do or what to do as Liberland develops. Why don't you let our audience know how they can learn more about Liberland?
Fairly easy to apply for citizenship. You can first become a resident and then come and help through some different means, or you just directly go for the citizenship. It's an investment of $10,000 or donation of $10,000, and you become a member of our community with the passport and with the right contacts to the right people. That will really help you to get the best out of the community.
Well, I don't have a great chat with a national president every day, but I sure did today. Thanks so much for your time. It's been interesting learning about Liberland.
Thank you very much. Great meeting you, Kate, and I hope to see you in Liberland soon.
Maybe you will. It sounds like a donation of $10K gets you a Liberland passport. Like I said earlier, as of March, 1,200 people had paid up to that amount for the passport. Music festivals and conferences in Liberland the next few months, that could be a way to check it out. Now, it's certainly something I'd need to know more about before I could either endorse it or reject it, citizenship in Liberland. To get more of the skeptic side, the criticism, I would visit the Liberland Wikipedia page and get ready for some dismissal of its diplomatic recognition there. Then you can visit Liberland.org and learn more about citizenship status, the passport, actually helping with the construction of the territory, and earning Liberland merits, which is a cryptocurrency. If you find it interesting, it's a matter for you to do some deep due diligence on. Next week, the king of commercial real estate will be here with us. Until then, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.